It's Messi! It is the cleanest of clean finishes from the best on the planet.
It's time for the biggest sports stories.
Liverpool, the champions of Europe, on top of the world.
The biggest interviews.
That such a great spectacle is ruined by such thuggish behavior.
And all the analysis right here.
He's the one player that has the arrogance to think that he can play in any stadium in the world and any pitch in the world in front of any player in the world and take them on.
Every weekday, it's my sport, it's your sport. It's ZiFM Sport. Let's join the team for the biggest show in the world of sport on ZiFM Stereo. My station, your station.
It's a very good evening, Zimbabwe. It's a Tuesday evening, Top Hit Tuesday here on ZiFM Sport. And this week we are looking at our Warriors who go into action against Botswana and Zambia. We start our build-up today. Now, according to sources, ZiFM has revealed they have secured a private jet for the French duo of Tino Kadewere and Marshall Munetsi to enable them to fly home for Zimbabwe's Africa Cup of Nations qualifiers against Botswana and Zambia. We'll be hearing the thoughts of the ZiFM Sport team that is here. That is Mike Madoda, Chris Midzi, our producer Sean Tafirenyika. My name is Barry Manandi. That's going to be an interesting one because we want to know exactly whether the nation needs that private jet or whether the private jet exists altogether. We've also got international sports news where we have our staple, the Formula One report, proudly brought to you by Zimoko, where Lewis Hamilton says Mercedes will face the challenge of finding more pace from their new car ahead of this weekend's season opening Bahrain Grand Prix.
We'll then give you more international sports news when we take you around the world in 60, taking off in Ireland, where head coach Andy Farrell says his players can use their Six Nations victory against England as a reference point for future success after they produced arguably the best performance of his reign. In India, Virat Kohli has said players should be consulted over the cricket calendar as the extended bubble life during the coronavirus pandemic has strengthened fears of burnout. And we'll touch down in the US, where Rory McIlroy has teamed up with renowned swing coach Pete Cowan after missing the cut at the Players' Championship.
And the second half of the show, as usual, is the beautiful game. And being a Tuesday, we'll kick off in France, where PSG manager Mauricio Pochettino has said his side needs to keep moving as Kylian Mbappe scored twice when Paris Saint-Germain won 4-2 at Lyon to go on top of Ligue 1. In Italy, reports say Andrea Agnelli clashed with Andrea Pirlo after Juventus 1-0 loss to Benevento on Sunday. In England, Liverpool are reportedly one of the latest clubs to show an interest in a transfer deal for Juventus midfielder and former Arsenal star Aaron Ramsey, and we'll also have updates for you from La Liga and the Bundesliga.
And as always, we start with our power play. It's Top Hit Tuesday, so we call upon Yemi Alade. This is Turn Up. You better turn up. It's a Tuesday. It's just before Wednesday, and then Wednesday's before Thursday, then it's a Friday. So we're close enough. Let's turn it up.
The Warriors, the Chevrons, the Cheetahs, the Mighty Warriors, and the Sables. From the pool to the track to the field, we are Team Zimbabwe. The Home Front. Local sports news and analysis.
Why don't you follow and interact with us on social media at ZiFM Sport, or in our individual capacities at Chris Midzi, at Mike Madoda, at Sean Tafirenyika, at Barry Manandi, at Tatenda Ziambi, at Alois Bunjira. No, it's actually at Gazaman14 for Alois Bunjira. Why don't you interact with us on those platforms? So the big one, as I said earlier, is at ZiFM Sport. Right, let's give you that Warriors camp update, which concerns the boys who are based out in France. Now, according to reports this morning, ZIFA revealed they had secured a private jet for the French duo of Tino Kadewere and Marshall Munetsi to enable them to fly home for Zimbabwe's Africa Cup of Nations qualifiers against Botswana and Zambia. Most European clubs have blocked their foreign players from traveling outside the European Union during the international break, as they will need to be quarantined for at least 10 days upon return. However, the French government on Saturday opened the door for Kadewere and Munetsi and other foreign players in Ligue 1 and Ligue 2 to join their national teams after announcing that they will no longer be quarantined upon return. Now, subsequently, the Zimbabwe Football Association has tweeted on their official handle as a Tino and Munetsi update. They said, we have engaged the Mozambique Football Federation, who have in principle agreed to assist us to transport the players back to France after the qualifiers. They might not be available against Botswana, but could be here against Zambia. And it's signed off spokesperson Gwesela. That, of course, is the ZiFM spokesperson, Xolisani Gwesela. Michael, the proviso was that the French government agreed in principle on the basis that players would have to return on private planes. That's why ZiFM had to run around and talk to Mozambique. Can this be done, or is it too much effort for these two players? Your thoughts?
First of all, Barry, I don't think it's too much effort because of the importance of those two players. They are two of our Europe-based players who offer quality and experience and are playing at a very competitive level. We have seen Marshall Munetsi, who is one of the more rarely talked about stars, Warrior stars, show what quality he has in big games that he has played, especially in the game against Lyon, where yes, Kadewere may have scored, but it was Marshall Munetsi who was actually man of the match and was picked in the Ligue 1 team of the week, and he has been picked on a couple of occasions as well. So these are two important players for the Warriors cause against two teams in which we're not guaranteed victory. Botswana are no mugs, they're no pushovers, they're playing at home. They took a point away from the National Sports Stadium, and they'll be looking to go one better, that is to win versus Zimbabwe, especially a weakened Zimbabwe, and a Zimbabwe whose preparations have been in disarray. They'll be looking to take advantage of that and get the points. But the one thing, Barry, that is critical is the fact that ZiFM have said that these two players might not be available for Botswana. We're already weakened. We're already missing the likes of Kamabilit, who we could have done with in this game. And for us to be missing those two players who could have added the fear factor and the psychological edge in the game versus the Zebras is a blow that the Warriors are going to have to get over and play well to overcome Botswana.
Yeah, when you add to that list, Chris, of Kamabilit, as mentioned by Mike, you add the likes of Marvelous Nakamba, you add Tendai Darikwa, the UK-based boys, they're not going to be available either. And there would have been almost a glow around the Warriors on the basis that we would have EPL stars, Ligue 1 stars coming and descending upon Botswana. And then there's a weight about the Warriors. Right now, you got to say to yourself that Botswana, who primarily have players who are applying their trade domestically in Botswana themselves, as well as in South African leagues of that nature, they'll be licking their chops and saying, oh, this is a good chance for us against the Warriors. And so, yes, I agree with Mike. It's not wasted effort by any stretch of the imagination. We should try to get the boys in.
We definitely need to try and get the boys in. It's almost like right now Botswana is looking at us and thinking, you know what, these guys are ripe for the picking right now. They don't have their key players in midfield playing out front as well. We don't have our key players, our regular starters, the players that we rely on. And we know generally on the continent, when it comes to the quality of football played, it's definitely not as high as your European leagues. So having those players, first of all, in terms of quality, presents that extra edge, but also just in terms of the weight of the Warriors as a team was going to be a major factor in this game psychologically against Botswana, and we no longer have that.
You know what, Barry, whilst we can give ZiFM a pat on the back for the effort that they're making to get Munetsi and Kadewere in the country, there are questions that must be asked as to why this has become a logistical nightmare for the Warriors, especially if you consider that there really was no need to be hiring a private jet, to be going via, and for these players to be even late. There are flights right now out of Paris into Dubai, and a flight from Dubai into Harare that arrives in the capital every day at lunchtime. So I just don't understand what is happening when it comes to the management of the team. If we are preparing for these games, we knew of this date months ago. We knew what the circumstances around global travel were because they've been well documented, and people are harping on about you just needed to go to a travel agent and they would have told you that these are the conditions of travel, these are the areas of concern, these are the routes that you can take, these are the flights that are available, and we should have made our plans accordingly. Why has it become a nightmare?
And that nightmare is, and Mike, you're so right, because the proviso by the French government was for a return trip on a private plane. So there was no reason why we couldn't bring them home commercial and then return them using that Mozambican angle. The Mozambican angle, of course, coming up as a result of, we understand the Mozambican government, I think, has been able to avail or hire a private plane for one of their stars who are based in France. That star player being Reinildo Mandava, who plays for Lille out in France. So we're using a borrowed vessel to take our players back. No reason why we couldn't fly them commercial. I feel like one of those American generals, Chris, saying, bring our boys home. And that's what we needed to do.
That's what we needed to do. And like Mike said, they knew of this date beforehand. Plans could have been made. If it was indeed absolutely necessary for them to use a private jet, all that should have been organized ages ago. But we have a situation where the management, when it comes to these players, is not being taken seriously. The treatment of the players is not being taken seriously. Things like their preparation and their training is not being taken seriously. So all you can look to is the ZiFM management in terms of just, now we're expected to pull together a team and to perform and to qualify. But when in terms of preparation and actually managing this team, nothing is being done.
Can I just bring something up, guys? I know it's going to be an uncomfortable conversation, but there are those who are cynics who will say that it also calls into question perhaps the commitment of the said players who are playing abroad, especially when you hear reports of other European stars who are doing so much and going all the way to make sure that they get themselves to where they're supposed to be, and even making plans for their less well-heeled teammates. You know, reports that Naby Keita has asked every Guinea international based in Europe to just merely make their way into Paris, where he's hired a private plane that will take them into Conakry and then back to Europe, and stories of that nature. And I know it's not their responsibility, but sometimes you have to go back to the days of Peter Ndlovu and the commitment that he showed, Bruce Grobela, the commitment that they showed, the investment at a personal level that they made into the Warriors. And you've also got to ask questions around the commitment levels of our Warriors.
Yeah, it's a pertinent question, because you've got players who, in truth, should be well capable of doing those same initiatives that Naby Keita has been conducting. So it begs the question. But I want to sort of dive into what Chris has just brought up, which is the management of the squad as a whole. You got to say to yourself, Mike, I'm sticking with you, that the training or the loosening up training session that was conducted by the Warriors on yesterday left a lot to be desired. They went across to Railton Sports Club, and that, I think, in a microcosm, was emblematic of exactly how this camp has gone, because that surface was not fit for purpose. The selection of Railton was called into question. So it begs the question, are we doing the right things for us to qualify?
A sham, a shame, and a disgrace, Barry. And anyone who has seen the surface that these players were forced to train on, I think it's a reflection of the standards that are at ZiFM. They're classless, they're standardless, and they place importance on things that don't really matter. They place more importance on power politics. They place more importance on staying in office than running the game properly. You have only one job. One job. One job.
Yeah.
Okay? And where do you go? You go to Railton Sports Club, which has been condemned even by Boozer's teams. Boozer's teams will not touch it. They will not play on it. And that's where you expect Knowledge Musona, who's flown in from Belgium, a professional footballer in Europe, to train. That's where you expect all these boys who are coming in from South Africa to come and train. It's an absolute disgrace, Barry. And to be honest, it also highlights the lack of facilities in this country. Yeah. You and I had a conversation last night, and we were trying to count on one hand right now for a country that purports to be a football-loving nation. How many stadiums or fields right now are in decent nick? And you and I could only count the National Sports Stadium, Mandava, Baobab Stadium, Simbabora Stadium out in Shamva, and the Eagles Nest, which belongs to Golden Eagles Football Club. Outside of those 5 fields, Barry, 2 of which belong to 2 teams in Division 1, You name me any other surface right now that is actually football ready. The answer is probably no. And yet we've got more than 80 professional football teams in this country. We've got a whole football association, a whole Premier Soccer League, and yet we don't even have training facilities.
We don't even have training facilities. And for me yesterday, Mike, you talked about the fact that some of these players, in terms of their personal investment into the national setup, I feel as though part of the players become part of the problem, because they should have never agreed to train on that surface. It should have been highlighted very immediately that this was not a professional thing that they should have been doing. They should not have been training out at Railton, but they agreed. And in some ways, for me, that actually bolsters what's happening at ZiFA, because they say, you know what, the players are training anyway, the boys will just carry on. And that should never be the case.
I think that the fear, Chris, is around what they've seen happen historically. And sometimes they fear making a principled stand, because there's been a lot of victimization in years gone by when players have stood up for the right thing. Right now, one of the reasons why Matthew Rusike is no longer allowed in the Warriors' fold is because he fell out with ZiFA. He spoke up, he was critical, and then the likes of Omega Sibanda and the likes, of course, of Philip Chiangwa and Machana, who is still on the ZiFA board, did not take kindly to the sentiments and to the rebellion that was led by the likes of Matthew Rusike, the likes of George Chigova, etc. Players who we no longer see called up to the national team. So I totally understand, Chris, what you were saying. And there comes a time, I think, where the players have got to say something. And if they are to make a statement, I think it can't be 2 or 3 players. It's got to be the entire squad, including the team captain, Knowledge Musona, the senior players. Everyone says that this is a standard that's not acceptable. That way, they cannot victimize anyone, because in years gone by, there's been a divide and rule tactic that has seen certain players now ostracized and marginalized from the national team.
Well, the summary, guys, is that ZiFA shouldn't be, at this stage of its existence, at this stage of its life, shouldn't be having to borrow training pitches, have to borrow vessels. They should have their own stuff. They've got an entire ZiFA village out there. Unfortunately, AstroTurf was ripped out, but they could have laid an entire pitch during this lockdown and had it available for the national team. Then it will be predictable that when the national team comes into camp, they don't have to sleep there, but they certainly can train there. So I think ZiFA needs to be walking towards that to ensure that Zimbabwe at least has a chance. Let's look at those chances, because Zimbabwe is in Group H and are second with 5 points, 5 points behind log leaders and already qualified Algeria. Now, with the top 2 teams from each group set to qualify for AFCON finals, the Warriors will book their ticket if they beat Botswana and Zambia, fail to beat Algeria on the same day. Botswana Zebras have 4 points, while Zambia's Chipolopolo are at the bottom of the group with just 3 points. So we sorely need a victory over Botswana, and if the result between Zambia and Algeria go our way, we could have qualified by Thursday evening. That's our hope, albeit that the preparations have been far from ideal.
Hi, I'm Warriors coach Zdravko Logarušić, and you are listening to ZiFM Sport.
Sports with a difference.
Right, let's give you a local sports news roundup, starting with rugby news, where Zimbabwe national 15s rugby team manager Jason Maritz has announced a squad of 48 players that will report for camp in Harare on the 16th of May in preparation for matches in July. A squad of 40 players was named, while 4 others have been included on an invitational basis, while a same number is listed down as non-traveling reserve. A statement that used to be very popular when we were in primary school, wasn't it, Barry? And it was one of the most painful things to be listed down as a non-traveling reserve, because you weren't going anywhere.
And painful because of the very fact that you've pointed out, in the sense that never would a non-traveling reserve or a non-traveling substitute be called upon to actually travel. I don't recall a recorded incident in my entire 6 years of high school.
Oh, well, as rugby is a sport that requires big numbers, especially in practice, they'll certainly have a bit of use in the preparation for those matches. Let's go to tennis news, where former Prince Edward tennis player Jerome Hasson Adonis, I think I should apply for a job at the French embassy, shouldn't I, Chris?
Well done, Michael.
Well, Adonis is dreaming big after securing a scholarship at Johnson C. Smith University out in America. The Guru-bred athlete is one of the rising tennis stars in the country, and he believes the latest development could set the tone for his ambitions to become a world-class athlete. Let's wrap it up with volleyball news, where the Bulawayo Volleyball Association chairperson, William Majiro, says they faced a huge financial ask in their quest for resumption, but consultations are underway on how best to do it. Cabinet gave the green light for all sport in the country to resume, and the Sports and Recreation Commission, the SRC, has made it clear that the onus is on individual national sports associations to prove they can financially sustain their activities. This could see most associations struggling to resume activities, as sponsorship is a challenge for almost all sport codes in the country.
Hi, this is Mike Madoda, and you can catch me and the team for all the latest breaking news out of the world of sport, local as well as international, on your favorite station, my station, your station, ZiFM. We are Z-Team on ZiFM Sport.
Z. International Sports News Roundup, where the world comes out to play. From sunny Melbourne to the streets of Monaco, the deserts of Bahrain to the jungles of Brazil, get up to speed on the Formula One report.
Let's get into the Formula One news proper, and this time we have an update out of the Mercedes camp, where world champion Lewis Hamilton says the Silver Arrows will face the challenge of finding more pace from their new car ahead of this weekend's season opening Bahrain Grand Prix. Mercedes encountered more complications than usual during Formula One's condensed pre-season program last weekend, with a gearbox problem leaving them playing catch up, as the W12 was not yet balanced to the drivers alike. Now, given the challenges in testing, Lewis Hamilton has identified Red Bull as strong favorites ahead of the opening race of the season.
This is the perfect time for us to find the issues and have the problems. And so I welcome that. And I think everyone's just keeping their heads down. No one's particularly fazed by it. We're a multi-championship winning team, and we know how to pull together and keep our head down and focus on the job. But there's, without doubt, it's quite impressive to see the speed of some of the other teams. I think Red Bull are looking particularly strong, and it's great to see McLaren also looking strong, and also Renault. So yeah, I'm excited also, because that means more fun.
Z.
Well, Chris, the problems that they encountered they're used to in pre-season, and I think this has probably got them a bit worried.
Yeah, it's probably got them a bit worried. Usually we see Mercedes possibly encounter one or two things, manage to correct them before the season starts. But in this scenario, we've seen them struggle through testing. And I think as well, Toto Wolff himself not displaying a lot of confidence in that car, having to swatch off some allegations of sandbagging. And it just points to the lack of confidence that Mercedes will have going into the season, especially if they're talking about Red Bull as favorites. That's not just a statement to kind of throw the glare off them. That is actually a statement that points to the fact that Mercedes is not as prepared as they usually are.
And where are the problems, Barry, with the W12? I mean, where is the concern coming from?
Well, like you mentioned, there's the gearbox problem, but also it was difficult to handle and also not especially quick, although lap times in testing should not be taken as a true representation, because the drivers aren't going all out. Bottom line is they haven't got the pace. They've got reliability issues with the W12, and those need to be sorted before they get into the Bahrain Grand Prix, which in itself comes with complexities, because remember, it's the first night race of the season, so it's not the start that they would have liked, because it adds to the complexities of everything.
Okay, so the first race of the season is on. It's this weekend. It's Bahrain. It's a night race. And of course, it's going to make things very interesting, especially if you consider that there are reliability issues of concern at the Silver Arrows. Mercedes, not favorites going into this race, and they may well be playing catch up this season. At least that's what the neutrals are hoping for, if it's to become an exciting Formula One season in season 2021. And we will carry all the stories, all the reports, and everything you need to know on the Zimoko Formula One report on your favorite sports show, ZiFM Sport.
Hi, you're listening to ZiFM Sport. My name's Graham Sharp, and I'm the first Zimbabwean to take on the Dakar Rally in a bike.
Z.
Around the world in 60 seconds. International sports news.
We take off in Ireland, where head coach Andy Farrell says his players can use their Six Nations victory against England as a reference point for future success after they produced arguably the best performance of his reign. Farrell said despite criticism after opening defeats to Wales and France, the Ireland camp believed in the work they were doing and were rewarded with a crushing 32-18 win in Dublin on Saturday. Ireland could finish second in the Six Nations table after winning their final 3 matches, but must wait for the outcome of the postponed France versus Scotland clash on Friday. We'll head over to India, where Virat Kohli has said players should be consulted over the cricket calendar as extended bubble life during the coronavirus pandemic has strengthened fears of burnout, with India having started 3 one-day internationals against England today after winning a grueling Test Series 3-1 and T20 International Series 3-2. Kohli said more attention must be paid to cricketers' mental health. The players need to be spoken to and consulted with all round, said Kohli. We'll touch down in the United States, where Rory McIlroy has teamed up with renowned swing coach Pete Cowan after missing the cut at the Players. Cowan will be an addition to McIlroy's performance team, which also includes putting coach Brad Faxon and Michael Bannon, who has been McIlroy's coach since he was a young boy. Cowan is widely regarded as one of the top coaches in world golf, with a number of majors winners on his CV, including Brooks Koepka, Louis Oosthuizen, Graham McDowell, Henrik Stenson, and Danny Willett.
Hi, my name is Rune Shamba, Mytoria's super striker. You're listening to ZiFM Sports.
The big leagues, the big teams, the big players. The beautiful game on ZiFM Sport.
Neymar, Mbappé, Dibaye, and now Tino Kadewere enjoys a taste of the French football on ZiFM Sport.
Now, with all the talk of our France-based duo, that's the Warriors France-based duo of Munetsi and Kadewere, no better place for us to start the beautiful game than in France, where Paris Saint-Germain manager Mauricio Pochettino has said his side needs to keep improving as Kylian Mbappé scored twice as Paris Saint-Germain won 4-2 at Lyon to go top of Ligue 1. The 22-year-old France striker's efforts either side of the break saw him become the youngest player to score 100 goals in the French top flight. PSG took advantage of Lille's shock home defeat to Nimes to move to the summit on goal difference, as Danilo Pereira and Angel Di Maria were also on target for the defending champions. Let's hear from Poch.
Creo que sí, que es muy importante ir mejorando después de.
It's very important to keep improving after 2.5 months. I think we played 19 or 20 games. Improving every day is the most important thing, and playing at this level for 90 minutes is our aim. We need to take what we showed for 60 minutes and do that for the entire game. With hard work, we will get there. It is true that there is no time, but we're at the beginning of our project, and after 2.5 months, we are alive in 3 competitions: Ligue 1, the Coupe de France, and the Champions League.
Z.
Mike, I want to get your thoughts on 2 issues regarding Mbappe and football in general. And Mbappe, he's a phenom. We've seen him. He's a quality player. But I would like to also sort of highlight the fact that we're seeing more of an advent of top goal scorers and scorers coming in from wide positions. And Kylian Mbappe is exactly that. He's a wide man, but he scores a clutch of goals.
Yeah, absolutely. And he uses pace as an asset, and he's also a very unerring finisher. And so the chances that he gets, he's able to stick it to the back of the net. He didn't play well by any stroke of stretch of the imagination in this game. And I felt that the difference between PSG and Lyon was the experience as well as the quality that PSG has got. So whenever they got into positions where they were able to create a goal-scoring opportunity, they invariably took it. And yet Lyon actually had more of the ball. They played a bit Lyon, but they just didn't have the quality to trouble a very strong and a very athletic Lyon side. It's only when, and this is a bad one for Zimbabweans, Kadewere was pulled out and Slimani came in, that Lyon got some sort of goal threat, because Slimani plays down the middle and he will always pull the trigger from anywhere, and he was rightly rewarded with a fantastic finish from the top deep on the box, and he stuck it into the back of the net. So, whereas Kadewere had been stuck out wide and he wasn't really offering much in terms of troubling the PSG defense. So big weekend for PSG as well as Monaco, because Lyon and the log leaders Lille, they lost, and Monaco and PSG won. PSG now sitting on top of the table.
Kylian Mbappe doing the bits that need to be done for PSG, and playing in almost a similar position out wide is Tino Kadewere for Lyon, and in this game, as Mike is saying, failing to make an impact. Islam Slimani, we said that he's going to be a challenge to Kadewere, and unfortunately he's scoring the goals when Tino is going through a bit of a dry patch at the moment.
Yeah, and what that immediately does is that for a coach, you then tend to look more at Slimani to come in, like in this situation where you need the goals, you need an impact made. He becomes a more reliable player, and it's unfortunate because that automatically means that Tino Kadewere gets less game time. So I don't know if it's a thing of him needing to pull up his socks, or he just needs to get out of his rut. But Slimani definitely making an impact in Kadewere's position.
Well, Tino will have a bit of time on the private jet coming and going back to France, coming to Zimbabwe and going back to France to think about what his career.
Hopefully, Barry, hopefully.
Well put,
ZiFM say that they have an agreement in principle
with Mozambique to borrow the vessel. Well, Marshall Munetsi, he's having a good time of it. He was named man of the match again for Stade de Reims in their 1-0 away win at Dijon. And if he continues doing that, he's going to make a move to one of the other top 5 leagues in Europe very, very soon.
Now there are reports in Italy that general manager Andrea Agnelli clashed with Andrea Pirlo after Juventus 1-0 loss to Benevento. La Stampa via Football Italia says tension was high in the camp of the Bianconeri after yet another defeat to a team they should roll over without too much bother. And that's the thing, isn't it, Barry? The fact that Juventus was expected to win this game to keep up the pressure on Inter Milan.
Yep, and as a result, using the same word you used, pressure has come to bear within the Juventus family. So if this reports of the clash between the two Andreas, Agnelli and Pirlo, it's a sign that the perhaps the family, in quotation marks, is not too happy with how the team is going, because Benevento should be no challenge to Juventus. The old lady should roll over Benevento and be looking up rather than down.
Chris, where does the blame lie? Because I can understand perhaps Andrea Pirlo's frustration, because, this is a team you're expected to roll over. Does the fault lie with him? Or is it the players? Because the players should be able to beat this team. It's similar to Mourinho. When we spoke about Mourinho, Tottenham losing 3-0 last week in the Europa League, that you could understand his frustration, because the man can't lace up the boots and go onto the field of play.
Absolutely. You can understand his frustration. And also for me, when you take a look at a position like a general manager, when you make this appointment and you agree that this is going to be the coach for whatever period of time, I think if in this case, he's a relatively inexperienced coach, you also have to give him the time. And if there's already impact during his first season, then that's going to present issues. I think, like you said, he can't lace up the boots, but also I think that management at Juventus need to be committed to more of a long game when it comes to the appointment that they made with Andrea Pirlo.
Well, they've got the Italian Cup to look forward to, and they play Atalanta, so that's not a gimme. They're not guaranteed to win that one, but it looks like the Scudetto is something that may well slip their hands this season around, with Inter Milan looking as good as they are looking. But there will now be questions asked to whether Andrea Pirlo will be in charge of the old lady next season.
Let's head into the Premier League now, where Liverpool are reportedly one of the latest clubs to show an interest in a transfer deal for Juventus midfielder and former Arsenal star Aaron Ramsey. The Wales international has not had the easiest of times in Turin since his departure from the Emirates Stadium in 2019, and it would be interesting to see him back in English football. Barry, you're a Liverpool fan, but let's speak to you now as a pundit. Is this a good move on Liverpool's part?
I think Liverpool are looking for it. It looks like it's all sealed that Gini Wijnaldum will be leaving Anfield and headed towards Barcelona. So consequently, they need a replacement for him. He's a workhorse in the middle of the park. He wins the ball and also uses it very wisely. So they're looking at a player who can do that role. Can Aaron Ramsey do that? I think with a bit of coaching, absolutely. Certainly with the ball, he's very effective. They're also looking at players like Yves Bissouma, who's out at Brighton and Hove Albion. Any one of those two players would be, I think, a worthwhile replacement for Gini Wijnaldum. The fact that Liverpool needs to sign is without question. Is Aaron Ramsey the right one? I think he potentially could be.
He potentially could be. Mike, taking a look at it from Aaron Ramsey's perspective, not necessarily having a great time at Juventus, is this a result of the move across, or is it more to do with the change in coaching staff at Juventus?
Well, even before Andrea Pirlo came, he wasn't exactly a guaranteed start at Juventus. He didn't enjoy a great time before this season. So going to Liverpool will be a soft landing. I'm sure he'll be down on his knees praying every night if Liverpool have actually reached out to him so that he can join them. Because you're going to a place where you're going to be playing for a great manager. You're going to be playing for one of England's great teams in a great stadium with good teammates all around you. A chance for you to rebuild your career and to show what you can do. So it's a fantastic opportunity for him. And as for Gini Wijnaldum, I know a lot of Liverpool fans not happy, but I've got a different take on Gini Wijnaldum. I like him as a player. He's a workhorse, but we have seen that Liverpool needs something a bit more than just a workhorse in that midfield. They need players who've got the artistry and the creativity to actually break down teams who are playing a very low block against them. And that's what the likes of Ramsey will offer to Liverpool. He'll offer a goal threat. He'll offer creativity. For Gini Wijnaldum, I think to have something like 2 assists in the last 4 seasons, that's a damning statistic for any midfielder. I don't care how hard you work. It's just not good enough.
Just not good enough. But this looks to be a match made in heaven. Aaron Ramsey and Liverpool.
Let's go to Spain now. Real Madrid boss Zinedine Zidane has no intention of leaving his position at the club ahead of the 2021-2022 season. The former midfielder has been linked with a move back to France to replace Didier Deschamps as the French national team boss, either before or after the 2022 Qatar World Cup. Zizou saying he's not moving, Michael, and unfortunately it may be out of his hands given that Florentino Perez sometimes makes decisions all on his own.
Well, I don't think he'll certainly go and be a national team manager. I think he's too young. He's in the prime of his career, and management of national teams is usually for your elder statesmen, as it were, when it comes to managers. So the other consideration that Zinedine Zidane would have to make, and this applies to a specific class of manager, the likes of Pep Guardiola, Jurgen Klopp, managers of that nature. Where does he go? Yeah. Because there's only a certain club that he can manage, a certain class of club. So he leaves Real Madrid. It means that he's not employable to any other club, save for perhaps, guys, Juventus, because we don't know where Andrea Pirlo is going to be. So that could be an opening. And then the links, remember, with Juventus are there for all to see. Remember, Zinedine Zidane won the Ballon d'Or when he was a Juventus player. In fact, the Juventus Zinedine Zidane, I actually rate better than the Real Madrid Zinedine Zidane. So there is a link there. That could be the club where he goes to. It's almost like when the rumors started around Pep Guardiola, will he renew his contract, etc. where does Pep go if he leaves Man City? There is only there are probably just 2 or 3 clubs in the world that a manager like Pep Guardiola is going to manage. So for people to start talking about him going to manage a national team that plays 7 or 8 times a year, nah, Zidane is too young for that. That is coming later on in his career.
Well, those managers would have to go to a club with a ridiculously deep pockets, and Zinedine Zidane going to Juventus might not be a bad choice whatsoever. But we look at the pressure he's under at Real Madrid, Chris. It hasn't gone well this season. It hasn't gone the way that he would have anticipated. And you got to think to yourself that it's going to be a dent in the Champions League that possibly then puts a bit of gloss and shine on the season.
Yeah, it's been an incredibly tough season for Real Madrid and for Zinedine Zidane as well, and possibly going a little bit further in the Champions League might make it a little bit better in terms of their performances. But if you take a look at their results, they've had to grind out their results consistently. Those players have had to work overtime, especially because that squad is not necessarily one that Zinedine Zidane could have confidently said that he wanted to go into the season with, especially because they didn't necessarily recruit. So it's been a tough season for him. It's been a tough season for the club, but I don't think it's time for them to part ways just yet.
Yeah, it's an aging squad as well, Barry. Take a look at the ages of Luka Modric. I think he's 35. Sergio Ramos is around that age. Toni Kroos is now the wrong side of 30. Very players who are aging, and then also the fact Chris talks about them not being able to invest in the squad, and that's because the clubs just can't. They're in the process of sprucing up their stadium. They had to borrow $500 million. So people talk about Barcelona and their debt, and yet the situation in Madrid is no better. And listen, there's similarities, and you could say no different. But Zinedine Zidane, what will his next move be? We don't need to look at that quite yet because he's still the Real Madrid manager. Let's wrap it up with an update out of Germany, where Bayern Munich defender David Alaba has cut his list of potential destinations this summer down to La Liga rivals Barcelona and Real Madrid. The 28-year-old Austria international is leaving Bayern when his contract expires at the end of the season. So we'll see how that one rolls out. Quality player going possibly to quality clubs. That's all we have time for. We'll catch you tomorrow for Wacky Wednesday. May God richly bless you. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Manande, out.